TYRAW, take 2.
Yeah, here we go again.
Boy, Nerds Rage, boy. That was a ramble, but you guys will never see that first take we did, right?
Yeah, we burned the film.
We burned it. So let me reintroduce, because we're going to have to do this again. This is my man, Simeon Rad.
Yeah.
That's how you spell it.
Okay, so it's Simon Rad, but whatever.
Well,
it doesn't matter.
We're always teasing you about that, man. So my man here is very knowledgeable about, man, pop culture in general. I like to call him an undercover nerd because he is, even though he wants to deny it. And when you hear him talk, he's so knowledgeable. There's just no denying it, bro. It's okay.
Yeah, you've been stressing me about doing this one particular show with you for like 3 months, so
because we have the knowledge. You have the knowledge, and I want to share it with you guys. And some people have asked, what do we think about this and that? And we've spoken about Marvel. Marvel gets so much love. But DC are the originators of the comic book genre. They started that action comic books, Superman holding the car.
Yeah,
you know?
action and detective comics back in like the early 20th century.
How can we not talk about the Bats, the Supes, the Wonders, these people that Flashes. So just to let you know, people, we're gonna DC, the conversation is so long and we want to talk about everything. So I need to split this discussion in 2. The first one we're going to talk about the animated revolution of DC. I will talk about the comics, but I'm going to be honest and say that I don't know. I never read the comics that much. I don't have good knowledge about it, and I only want to speak about what we know about. You, on the other hand, might know.
I'm not a huge on comics either, but that doesn't matter because these days you have all the knowledge on the internet. So for better or worse, I know what you don't know.
There are people online. I might put. If you don't know, there's people online. I showed you that read the comics out to you, so you can just watch them. And honestly, I know some people are like, heresy. How dare you buy? Look, we live in a digital age right now. I haven't got the time, but I do find the comic stories interesting. And as we're going to speak about, they don't do as much animated shows as I would like. Yeah. So when people do these videos, I actually appreciate them. Yeah, because
they don't adapt that many stories from the comics anyway. Not like most comic stories aren't bad, but the good ones don't even get adapted anyway. So
with DC, we're going to leave the cinematic universe, the Batman, Superman, Justice stuff. We're going to talk the live action stuff. We're going to talk about that in the next video. But right now, we're going to speak about the animated history. Not all of it in detail because no one has time for that. That's what Wikipedia
But
there
the main milestones that basically made what back in the day Marvel sucked and DC was the shit.
Yes.
And the animated universe was a big part of that.
Yes, it laid the groundwork for that, the animated revolution in America.
I'll go one step further. Most people into the DC universe nowadays got introduced through their animated shows, not through their comics.
Me. That's me. That's me. And I love them so much, even to this day. And I love them so much, which is why I'm speaking about it now. And we're going to start with what most people consider to be, what really started off, not historically, but, generally, to the general audience. Batman, the animated series.
Yeah, exactly. You had very family-friendly animation in the 70s, 80s. And what happened in the 90s, that because of Tim Burton's Batman, huge money influx coming in, and they said, we need a Batman show. And there was this young guy who just started there called Bruce Timm, who volunteered to do this show because it was an open call. And he just wanted to do something that nobody has ever seen before. So not the family-friendly stuff, but stories that had subtext. He got writers like Paul Dini, who the nerds love, and Batman fans know these guys inside out. But basically, they come from a TV background, so they approach every episode if they were writing a TV show. And starting with the Batman animated show, which continued then into the Superman animated show, and then later on Batman Beyond, we have like the first big series of DC hits.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the good old days when we were young men watching cartoons about men in spandex.
And I loved every minute of it. I went back and I just took a look at the style, that whole, 60s style of the original Batman series?
It was like a mixture between 40s, 50s, 60s with
Art
Deco, like Art Deco architecture.
Yeah.
And no pop trivia for you, because they want a really dark show.
Yeah.
They used black paper instead of white, and from what I understand, the Japanese animators were getting sick and almost dying from the fumes. So a few episodes in, they changed that.
Wow, man, that's news to me. And a lot of people didn't even know that. We spoke about this on the podcast before about how a lot of American animation were being outsourced to Japan for financial reasons, which does make sense, by the way. But that is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to try to put a link to that in this, if I can find an article to that. But that's
there's
crazy.
a Bruce Timm interview about it. But basically, Japanese called up, said, "Hey, our guys are dying. Could you guys do something about that?" And they said, "If you guys can keep the quality."
I don't mean to laugh, by the way. That was terrible.
No, that's fine. Basically,
yeah.
I'll do another take.
No.
So they said, if you guys can keep the quality, that's fine.
Yeah.
So veterans of the show can tell where it gets a little bit lighter, but it looks similar enough.
Yeah.
So after a few episodes, they had to change that. But the point was they were very ambitious. They invented a brand new language of animation where the character models look different.
Yeah.
And up until this day, it holds up. I think it still looks more sophisticated that you see that compared to other shows that you see both in America or both in the West and in Japan. Even some of the Japanese shows produced nowadays can't touch it in terms of just storyboards, art style, and all those other elements beyond just pure animation.
Would you agree in saying that the Batman animated series opening is one of the most epic openings of all time?
And you don't need the title. You never had a title screen on that. You just have the WB logo, and then it's Batman. Even before Batman shows up, you know it's Batman. Just from the two shady guys
looking up and him coming down and he's standing. Anyway, it's enough at orgasm. Let's just get through it. Basically, the show did such a great job of. I was so interested in Gotham. The darkness, the tone, the stories were so interesting. And the thing I loved about Batman animated series, Batman, to me, he wasn't. It wasn't like he was always the main focus. It was the villains, the crooks. I always felt there were sympathetic characters in the show.
Yeah.
And I just was so engaged. And you spoke about this off camera before, but I do need to pick back up. The movies, one of the movies in particular, was so engrossing, so dramatically done well. What was that movie?
It was Mask of the Phantasm, my personal introduction to the character. I saw it before the Tim Burton movie, and if you're gonna introduce like your kid or anybody who's young to Batman, best thing to do, because the Joker is the main villain, so you get the Joker in there. It has the origin in there as well. It's also an origin story, but it also is a very good character piece. It has real emotion, a real relationship. So when you get older and you go back to watch that movie, you see all the subtext, you see between the lines, you see small things you haven't noticed before that actually speak a lot about the characters and make it a watchable movie, something that actually feels like a real love story.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a love movie, it has plenty of action. It's more like a crime mystery about who's killing all the gangsters. But it's just a perfect introduction. They have so much between the lines. The show doesn't need to be violent or gory. It doesn't need to be like Dragon Ball Z, where the appeal when you were watching as a kid was like, oh, this is finally serious because I see blood and violence. In Batman, nobody even had to die on camera, but you can still come back years later as an adult and appreciate that show, not just for nostalgia, but now you understand more stuff you didn't understand when you were watching it in the first place.
And just jumping on what you said, because we're going to make this swift, the Superman series was great. It was another, kind of like night and day, where Superman was a lot more colourful, and he's in Metropolis, and we get great stories with the Brainiac arc, and even the Superman, showing how he came. The Superman series was fantastic, and even where that series ended with the Dark Side coming down, and then the actual first, I think it was like the first murder. The last episode, the Dark Side actually murdered. I'm sorry to spoil it. Honestly, it doesn't mean
actually. The last episode was different. That was the first introduction of Darkseid, where he kills the cop.
Yeah.
That was the first introduction, and that kind of sets the plot on why Superman and him have this relationship. How Superman hates this guy. But the last episode where he brainwashes him in the first episode.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is nerd trivia. But basically, the show wasn't afraid of going dark, but also in contrast to what they're doing to the movies nowadays, where Superman doesn't even have his own movie. It's basically a pilot for something, and they're trying to make it as dark as Batman.
Yeah.
The Superman show, you can clearly tell it was a Superman show. It was lighter, but that didn't mean it was less serious, and it took itself less seriously. In fact, from certain points, it took itself more seriously because it dedicated 3 episodes to the character's origin.
True.
Where in Batman, you didn't have like a young Bruce Wayne arc.
So to suffice, Batman, Superman, tick, yes, love them. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then the next, we're talking about the Batman adventure, forget all of that. Just moving on. So the next thing that happened, was it?
There was a show in between, Batman Beyond.
Oh my God, sorry. How could I apologize?
Which we all, but you're right, because that's when we first see the Japanese influence come in.
Yeah.
And anybody,
definitely.
Anybody who's a 90s kid knows that the hit shows like Pokemon started a trend of cartoons focusing on some sort of game. So the merchandising, the toys were part of the show, which is obviously very good for a financial reason. But because of this, networks got really careful with new shows. And the way Batman Beyond was born is very interesting.
What's up?
Bruce Timm, who was the creator of the show, got asked in for a meeting. And they said, we love the show that you're doing, and it's doing okay, but it skews a little old, meaning 14 plus age demographic. And he was like, you already have, at this point, 3 sidekicks in there, Nightwing, Batgirl, and the young Robin. So what are we going to do? And they said, how about teenage Batman? And for every other person, probably they would have thought, okay, young Bruce Wayne, origin, whatever. No. They said, okay, how about we build on all the stuff we did before? So naturally, set in the future, Bruce Wayne's old, and he needs a young kid coming in taking up the mantle. And it sounded crazy. At first, they didn't want to do it, but they went through with it. And I think we can both agree on that Batman Beyond was not only even darker in a good way, but even more serious.
Let me correct you there. It's actually called Batman of the Future here in the UK.
Okay.
I know, it's so completely stupid. I thought...
I never got... They even changed the title screen. They went the extra mile, like, is Beyond like a curse word in this country or something?
I don't know. UK. Maybe it was called something else in your region, but yes, to answer your question, Batman Beyond, it was cool, it was retro, with the gene splicing, with the new villains. I loved it. I'm not going to go into a review about it. I thought, again, seeing Bruce Wayne being taken the Alfred mantle, the grumpy old man, but even this episode where he actually gets in the sea, blah, blah, blah. I can orgasm about the show. Batman of the Future was phenomenal. And to add to it, because I have to mention it, it has, you mentioned Marks of the Phantasm was the first, is the best animated movie, but the second best Batman animated movie is the Batman Beyond movie, The Return of the Joker. That is so fantastic. It actually kind of connects the original series and the future, bringing the Joker back. And I don't want to ruin it, but man, what a great show. What a great series. Again, I hate, you know what? I've said this before. I hate orgasming on Batman so much because DC have pumped so much into Batman. And we haven't spoken about Superman, but the next show, which the next milestone, as I'll jump to, would be the Justice League. Because, it started to expand a bit more what we've seen, with Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter.
Well, again, we have a very interesting origin for the show here. That Batman Beyond was the first show officially canceled. Because it also skewed very old. Like, for some reason, because they had this approach of serious writing, they just couldn't compete with something like Pokemon.
It just wasn't making that money.
Yeah, it was not like. For any 90s, like Yu-Gi-Oh!, basically from the title screen to the end, they're selling you a card game. And you cannot compete with that. So there were 2 shows they pitched to the network after Batman Beyond. One was the canceled Batman Pokemon show, which was about 3 young kids competing to be Batman in a post-apocalyptic future. So you have young Batman, Robin, and Batgirl.
That never came to be.
Yeah, with a robot called Alfred.
Please.
And they obviously didn't go with that. And then you can find this on YouTube. There's a promo clip done for the Justice League cartoon that's a mixture of very basic animation and scenes edited out from the previous shows to pitch a Justice League cartoon with sidekicks. So they were like, let's bring all these characters together with the sidekicks to a more family-friendly show. And they never needed to use it. When they said, oh, so you actually, after winning 2 Emmys, would do a show with all DC characters, at least the main 7. Sounds like a show to me, green light. So that was the beginning of the Justice League show, which that was the first show I didn't vibe with that well as the previous ones. But I know you're a huge fan of it because of your sister.
Basically, that intro to the Justice League was so lame. I thought it was the most corniest thing I've seen. And I just thought, why? I never saw Wonder Woman or Martian Manhunter before, or Hawk Girl. And I just thought to myself, this just isn't going to work. But like you said, my sister was hampering on me. Oh, and she's even older than me. By this time, we're mid to late 20s, and she's like, Justice League is awesome. So I thought, oh my god, okay, because I love Batman, Superman, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. And smack me sideways, the show was fantastic. It impressed me. Again, great writing, proving once again that, you know, they widened the scope, more new characters, the Black Green Lantern, the Hawk Girl.
Oh yeah, they had the best version of like the Justice League up until this day in terms of the team. Like not having Hal Jordan, but John Stewart Green Lantern, Hawk Girl instead of Hawkman. Really, the only character I missed out of there was Cyborg, a good interpretation of Cyborg.
Well, I guess we'll get to that later. But what I will say is the first 2 seasons were great, and then to my utter surprise, they even made it even better when the 3rd season, named Justice League Unlimited, widened the scope even more, and now DC opens the door to even more of their back catalogue of interesting characters and giving them spotlight episodes. I know people hate the character Booster Gold, and he is a bit of corny coming from the future. It's just silly, but you get to see characters like that, and you know, it was just such an invigoration to see the writing of these new characters you don't even know, like Black Canary as well.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it just was so interesting. And
Green Arrow was like the main new guy. Like they opened up with him in the pilot.
The anti-Bat, he was like the anti-Batman kind of. He was always been that way. But
a better theme song. It was It was an improvement on the original Justice,
which I liked.
Show.
Which I liked. And again, well, as you told me off camera, it actually just ended. And the ending was okay.
Yeah, it was network logic because the network, after 50 to 75 episodes, you can just re-air it non-stop.
Okay.
So you don't need new episodes. But you've
got enough for syndication.
Yeah, but because of the way Batman Beyond ended, and fans, because
I wanted more.
Okay,
I wanted more.
Hate to sidetrack, but the last episode of Batman Beyond didn't air for years because of 9/11, because it involved a terrorist attack. From what was it, Cobra, the terrorist guys in the show. Yeah. And when fans finally saw it, they were like, "Well, that's it. It's just a regular episode. It's not like a big climax, no big reveal." So after that, Bruce Timm made a big deal about having a season finale for every show. So the Justice League shows had a season, and the Justice League Unlimited, both seasons had a season finale. The first season had the future one where we tied in with Batman Beyond, and the second season had obviously the big climax with the war and everything. So again, just I'll maybe leave my ratings on this when we finish. We'll already tell us how we just rate the shows at the end. But moving on, I think maybe at the same time at the end, Teen Titans was on. Well, this was the point where the good show was the Justice League Unlimited show, and you had 2 experiments. You had the Batman, made by the guy who did the Jackie Chan Adventures, and his style. He did great for Jackie Chan Adventures, which is an up-to-beat action show, fun, comedic. But then they made the mistake of using the same characters that they used for Batman the Animated, and you go from an Emmy award-winning show with Mark Hamill doing the voice of the Joker, Kevin Conroy, all-star cast, to something that's more lighter and action-focused, where even the Penguin knew kung fu.
When I saw that,
it just didn't work. And you had Teeny Titans, which again is trying to skew for that anime crowd, and it had its fans, but it just wasn't a serious show. It was a guilty pleasure show you watched to pass the time.
Now I watched it because I'm a completionist. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I just wanted to see it again. My sister was forcing me to just watch the show.
Damn, this is like family therapy for you. This episode, you just get all the frustration out, huh?
You know what? But I'm gonna hate on there because you know what? I do feel like Teen Titans did have some. The way the antagonist Slade was messing with Robin, there was a lot of brainwashing, there was a lot of... It got somewhat serious, so in the end, it was decent, I will say. But moving on from that...
Get to today.
Well, we get to the core of what we was not today per se, but we get to something so epically awesome. A show I didn't
the Brave and the Bold, right? Maybe it was... Okay, I thought it was better than the Batman because it knew it wasn't serious.
I'm not going to waste any time talking about that show.
All right.
I'm talking about... Let's talk about Young Justice, right? Now, this is a show, again, where I'm like, why am I going to watch a show with the leftovers, with the sidekicks, the characters
You think it's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
Because... For me personally, who doesn't come from a comic book background, I know the stories, but I don't keep up with them on week-to-week basis. to me, sidekicks are just a cheap way to introduce more characters to have spin-off books.
Yeah.
It's like the lesser version of the big guy.
Yes.
And they don't have their own personality or interesting backstory. And if I want to see a story with Batman, I don't want to see a Robin story. I want to see a Batman
I'm too young to be Batman, so let me be Robin. It always felt like, and then, you know, I see Superboy. What, this guy just looks like a copy of Superman with a black shirt. This is meant to be hip. So, again, I was like, But this show I caught up with mid-season or something. This Young Justice is second to Batman as my favorite DC show of all time. Animated show.
I'm gonna go on camera right now and say, since the 90s that we mentioned as the first golden age, this is the next show that had equal body writing in terms of serious tone, which is not about pure violence or action. It's about subtext. It's about something that kids can watch because it's animation and we all like animation. But if you're older, you're not watching a kid's cartoon out of nostalgia. You're watching it because there's a good story there, and anybody can look past that, which nowadays where everybody's a fucking nerd is almost everybody. You know, they will find a good story there. And that is the most important. It has subtext.
It really did. And you know, I know some people were kind of hesitant, even me, when I think the second season was delayed or something.
It started right away, and in the middle, which is the worst thing you can do, in the middle there was a delay.
Well, I heard about it later, and it was called Young Justice Invasion, and there was a 5-year time skip in between the seasons.
5 years, I think.
Everything had changed, and I was like, you ruined my favorite show. I love Young Justice. Why'd you do this? But by the end, I know I'm such a
you're like a child.
Yeah, and then by the end of it, the story was even better than the first season. Young Justice Invasion, again, superb, intelligent, compelling, intriguing writing. Yes, I'm bringing all these nouns. It was just so... It blew me away, man. It really did. And when I heard this series got cancelled because it ended on a cliff, it ended cleanly, but it ended on a cliffhanger with a lot of issues unresolved. And I was just like, I need you to finish the story. And when I heard it wasn't coming back, to say I was devastated and fucking furious is an understatement.
Yeah, there was a petition and everything online, and it really is that, because this was the first show, in my opinion. Like, my only complaint about the Justice League show was that, whereas in Batman and Superman, the animated series worked perfectly within its own universe, a world that it established, the Justice League, when you have all these characters intermixing with each other, that was the first time I kind of saw that this is a little bit silly. You have Superman watching TV in costume. You have them in like a cafeteria, you know, Batman and Green Lantern being in a cafeteria, stand in line, take their food out.
I remember that.
And you know, obviously, if you're 8 to 12 years old, you love it because all your characters are there, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, you're already suspending your disbelief and buying into stuff. But to me, I'm like, to keep up the same quality of writing, you got to think of these small things and how realistically, if people want to get together as a team, they would maybe have a uniform or just small bits to iron out to make the world work. And Young Justice was the first show where it worked perfectly. They brought in politics, social media, even like tourism and people visiting, how they have like you know, the watchtower on the ground, you know, the Justice League headquarters is like just a tourist attraction.
There was bitterness, there was, you know, there was adolescence, there was little romance drama, but it was written so genuinely interesting and honestly that I just thought this is better than Justice League.
Yeah, and all characters worked. Like in Justice League, it was cool to see the smaller characters come in, but some of them were just a cameo. It was like a one-off episode or a novelty factor, where in Young Justice, every character worked, so when they cut the show short, you're like, there's so much you could do. There's so many more storylines that you can go for, that it wasn't like a Booster Gold episode where, okay, we have one episode with Booster Gold, and that's it. Any character they introduced, you could watch a whole season with it.
Let me tell you something. Aqualad. Listen to that name. It's like Aqualad.
Oh yeah.
Now this guy is like my favorite character.
Yeah, and
so
finally
awesome.
they introduced a black superhero without making a major white superhero just black.
Counterpart, replacement.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, he died, so now he's black. Oh, he came back, so the black character's like, you know, because they had the original. They had the original will add, or somebody, and they made it a good story. They made it like a love triangle. And in the time skip between season 1 and season 2, that was a huge plot point. So they even made it work. And I thought if they're gonna do another straight to DVD movie, the time skip that they couldn't do on TV because it involves death,
makes perfect sense.
They made it into a movie, and it got canceled for the most predictable reason ever. And I know you already hate it.
I do.
But because animation is very time-consuming and expensive, the real money is in merchandising.
Yeah.
All the Japanese shows that run on Japanese channels filled with animation on stuff all day, because it's a different market.
Yeah.
Even those shows are made to produce merchandise.
Yeah.
There could be action figures, T-shirts, plushies, whatever you can think of. And with a show with Young Justice, when the ratings came in, it turned out that most people watching it skew older than their target demographic. They're 14 plus, and did you mention this to me that a lot of them were women, or the majority were women?
The majority of viewers of Young Justice were women, and you know what I think it's because I hate to generalize or stereotypicalize it, but because it was so dramatic and it dealt with much more adult themes, it's like young boys aren't gonna like this. They want to see pow pow and bing bang boom, and this has got so much drama and so now we gotta cut this show because it's not making us that money. We need the toys, we need the merchandise, we need the video games, and this show's just too. It's just like. I don't want to get too much into a ramble because I can get upset, and I did on the last video, but it just upsets me that
Destroyed tape was destroyed by Dawn.
DC just, they like what works. They like Batman, they like Superman, they like merchandise, and you know what? I'm going to fast forward, and to prove this fucking point, to this day, currently, the animated show that's running today, and I'm sorry we're going to skip a lot of the rest because we need to wrap this up anyway, is Teen Titans Go. Teen Titans Go is the perfect example of what I mean of DC doing what works. And what I mean is, you've always had a Teen Titans show in the past. But now what we've got is, in a nutshell, it's like Teen Titans mixed with Adventure Time. The comedy in this show is so wacky and random. To be fair, I watched a few episodes, I thought it was funny. But you're confusing the audience because some of the voice actors are actually from the Young Justice and Teen Titans, and there's no storyline. It's just dumb, crazy comedy. And I just watch and I'm like, you're going to ask the question, why do this? Why do this? We've already seen Teen Titans. You're not even going to bring back another. Look, you could use different DC characters.
Or make a new show. And do this stupidness. Why are you using the Teen Titan characters? Because it works and because the people know these characters.
It has a built-in audience, so it's easy. I'm like, DC, what are you doing? It wouldn't irritate me as much if I hadn't seen greatness before. That's the problem. So you can sit here and look at this guy just fanboy now. I'm like, it's when you take 10 steps back from greatness on something that's kind of unfinished, and you make this goofy shit, and on top of that, Batman Baby Bows, Beware the Batman, and the Green Lantern CG bullshit show that went straight to junk. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that shit's on today. There's no other show like. Sorry to I know I'm going on a ramble, but I'll stop it now. Sorry to go on, but when you had Batman, you had a show that was expanding the universe, that was introducing you to the characters, that's getting to the fan base. At the end of the day, we're old. You've got a new generation.
Hey, you old, motherfucker.
Okay. But you've got people younger than you. Well, I'm not going to say your age, but you've got young people that don't know these characters. There isn't an animated show, unlike Batman, introducing them into this. All we've got is this crap.
Well,
you can go back and watch the old stuff, yes.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
You're talking about TV. TV is the community's way to get into this because it's on right now. And yes, we have Netflix. And yes, we have streaming to go and do it. But I just think, from a promotional standpoint, if you just want cheap comedy, I'm speaking like a fanboy. Yes, you're cheapening your character base. You're not using what you got there. And again, I'm not going to bring up Marvel, but again, they are adopting the Marvel strategy now. When this, in my opinion, too late.
Fast tracking it.
Yeah, but with the animated show, they got nothing going on with this shit. And as a fan of the animated series is done, I'm disgusted and irritated.
It's funny you bring that up, because it's no secret when you look at Teen Titans Go, it's literally they reused the same show because it had a built-in audience. And if we're going to be really technical, the arts, how they did it caters to a new form of merchandising for small plushies and keychain stuff. And it's merchandising. But what's really interesting to me is all the CG shows, you know, Green Lantern, Big Word, the Batman.
Yeah.
They said these were the next generation big animated projects that were supposed to replace the ones from the past. They even have this guy called Glenn Murakami, who worked on Batman Beyond.
Okay.
He's from a Bruce Timm background. So he was one of the original guys working on Batman Beyond, Justice League. And he was the showrunner. This is his big project. If you watch the pilot for Before the Batman, it plays tribute to the opening credits of the animated series because it's two guys robbing a bank and it's the same shot of the buildings coming down.
But I'm going to assume it's worse.
Well, there's two things. First of all, I don't get it. I get it that you need to involve with animation, but when you look at the CG stuff, you can look at it from any perspective. It looks like shit. Like, no matter what you do, the show doesn't look as good as what came almost 20 years before it.
Yeah. But even those shows get cancelled. What?
Because it's bad. Because they don't have a tone. They promise people that this is the serious, dark Batman show. That was the whole hype beyond. Like,
Beware the Batman.
Yeah. The Green Lantern was a tie-in to the Ryan Reynolds movie. And that's why it didn't work. Because the movie was bad, and the show... Again, trying to ride the wave of, you know, what comes in from importing shows that they try to have a continuous story. And the problem was that instead of having good individual stories like what the old school animation was known for, now they try to have Hal Jordan and the Quest. And I try to watch the show, but I'm like, because of the way it looks, there's action, there's no serious impact. I don't feel like these people are in danger, even though, you know, it's a comic book, nobody ever really dies, but it just felt like I see where the conclusion is, and every episode is just a lame cliche build up to that, and then you go overboard with Batman where you try to make a dark show, but it looks so goofy with that CG costume, and the action, the animation, it looks so lame when they fight. So
I don't, you know, I'm going to defend you and say, generally, even if you go on Wikipedia, you can always see that general reception, and you can watch YouTube videos. The general consensus, the reception for the people is that they were shit.
Yeah, and the final point, why I brought it up, because I think the format needs to be changed. Because that's a classic example where they want to adapt what works for, you know, anime and all that stuff.
Yeah.
They want to have the toy line, because CG, one of the big reasons why they like CG, because you can CG any toy into it with any compromise. So the toy line would look identical to the show, which according to marketing research is important, but let's not talk about it. We can all
businessman here.
Yeah.
He's bringing up the good points though. No, I hear you.
I could give you more business trivia, but the bottom line is that I think that the moment you skew old, you get people who are not going to watch it on TV. They're going to stream it. They're not going to buy that toys. Young Justice, if they would have actually put some effort in, instead of doing the same old formula and said, okay, how can we monetize 17-year-old girls, you know, phone covers, yada, yada, yada.
That wasn't their initial target though.
Exactly. The show wasn't built for that.
Yeah, I know.
So because they don't put in extra work.
It would have been a teen girl drama.
Yeah, exactly. But I think unless they do a Netflix HBO original show that's 12 episodes and it's meant to attract people to that subscription service, they're not going to get it right, because they're going to try to go dark and make something like We're the Batman that doesn't do comedy, doesn't do the goofy stuff, and when you watch it, it's boring as hell because it has no personality. It's a long toy commercial where Batman is just a brooding guy who's all silent.
Simon, let's wrap this up, because just take this. You guys probably know how we feel generally. I like someone playing devil's advocate. I don't want to say I'm a purist or an elitist or just want it my way. I'm just saying that the animated shows have laid such a great foundation for the whole industry, for the industry, not just the comic industry, the animation industry, but DC anyway. I don't know why they just haven't given the fans what they wanted, and now they're trying to, and that's why we're going to move on to the cinematic universe, because this is a whole.
This is the easy part. This
was the easy part, but
they used to dominate this field, so it's like now they're just messing with themselves.
Yeah, and Marvel's even left. Marvel still left the animation playground to DC, and they're not capitalizing on it, which I still think is a mistake. I'm sure we're going to bring this up when we talk about cinematic universe. But I'm just going to end on. I want to ask you and the audience a question to wrap this up. People, thank you for if you've watched the whole video up to this point.
You're a champ.
I appreciate it. Thanks for. I know I couldn't find a lot of people having a discussion that is on DC without it being 2 hours. So for us to condense it to however long it's been, trust me, we've had to cut this down because this is the second take. But people, let me ask you a question and I'll sign up a question.
Okay.
What do you think? Do you have hope for the future of DC animation?
Okay, so I give you guys a little aid. Time Warner also owns HBO, and they're starting a subscription service in April of this year, 2015. So I would say, if they look at the old school shows that work, not because they're skewed for adults and are uber violent, or skewed for young kids and they're not even serious, but work because they're well written, exciting to watch, but have subtext, and they take that formula and apply it to a streaming service that's modern, where the goal is to make a quality show that people want to watch. Either it's people want to give their kids, but people want to watch in our age because they still like these characters and they like animation, but they don't want dumb stuff. So make it a Netflix exclusive, make it an HBO streaming exclusive, Amazon exclusive, whatever. Whoever takes it, you can score an exclusive deal and make something along the lines of Batman the Animated, where there is a continuous arc of character development, but the stories have a beginning, middle, end.
Even if they're short, I'll appreciate that. And just my thoughts on that, I don't see it happening because, I'm gonna go outside the confines of the question. Just say they're too focused on the live action stuff right now, which is a really damn shame because, like I said, it's always the animated shows have always given them a basis. And you know what? I forgot to bring this up on the first take.
Okay,
and I would have hated myself if I forgot about this. What they are doing are these annual DC movies. Right?
Oh, the straight to DVD.
The straight to DVD movies that are trying to give people okay, so we've got. What do you guys think of those movies? Listen, there's no time for this. The New 52, people are very upset. They don't really like the new Superman and same thing, man. So this and the other. Look, I think if they had a TV series, adapting these things, it would work a lot better. When I watched the last movie, The Throne of Atlantis, I was like, this shit is rushed. It was decent, but I was like, this isn't enough time for me. This should have been a 6 or 4 episode arc on TV. A 2-hour movie for that. And this is a new universe, a new Superman, new Wonder Woman is this fish out of water now. And people, we'll talk about this in like universe video anyway, but this annual movie thing isn't working for me. Right now, they're okay, but the pre-52 ones were a lot better. These new ones, you can't do it in 2 hours. You can't catch up on these stories in 2 hours. It isn't working. And that's what I've got to say. And that's what we've got right now as an equivalent to the series.
I'll give you a short opinion. To me, it's just a wasted opportunity because why not make them continuous? If that's the only way you can...
They're trying to. They say they're all... Because this is meant to be after the Justice League War movie and then before that, the Flashpoint Paradox. They are. Yeah. But does it feel like it is?
No, I mean, I thought... Never mind that. I saw Flashpoint and I saw the one beforehand with Superman being in it.
Yeah, that was after Flashpoint War. When Darkseid came and they took out Darkseid's eyes. So it was Flashpoint, it was that, and then it was this Throne of Atlantis. And they will all go... Because they bring up the points because that... Yeah. So for you, it's not working either.
So for me...
If I'm wrong, I'm going to hear my comments.
Do movies in theater and do animation on television.
Just bring an animated TV show back. We spoke long enough, guys. Yeah, exactly. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments down below. And we'll see you on the much longer video, which is probably going to talk about the cinematic universe.
See you in 5 hours, okay?